this, we call upon Dr. Rajneesh Kumar Singh, who is additional professor at SGPGI, for the next presentation.
Thanks to Professor Debakshi. It's an excellent meet. And I am supposed to review the evidence for the management of CBD stones in a space of what I was told is 12 minutes. As opposed to segment 4B5, it's not a very attractive, it's not a very attractive subject, but the volume of literature on this subject is probably 10 times more than what would you'd be seeing with 4B5. So it's a Herculean task to try to cover everything. Right. Excuse me, I'll have to wear my specs because I can't see the... Okay, I can see that, right. Okay. Yeah, so the reason we should be treating CBD stones is that they're very common. Apparently, almost 10% of all gallstone disease will have CBD stones along with it. If that is the case, then we should be having far more CBD explorations than we actually are doing or are seeing. And the reason we are not doing so is probably part of this review, which said that they try to compare laparoscopic cholecystectomies who underwent intraoperative cholangiograms with those laparoscopic cholecystectomies who did not go under intraoperative cholangiogram. A large number of patients found that in the first group where the IOCs were done, almost 4% of patients had evidence of CBD stones which were not suspected before surgery. On the other hand, patients who did not undergo intraoperative cholangiogram, a much smaller percentage of patients came back with symptoms of retained stones. Please make the differentiation. Unsuspected CBD stones versus clinical retained CBD stones. And therefore, the conclusion of the review was that too many CBD stones are present than we suspect, and possibly a large number of them are not going to cause problems. A very elegant prospective study was conducted by this group, and they picked up all patients who were positive on an intraoperative cholangiogram, left the transcystic catheter there, and repeated the cholangiogram at intervals of 48 hours and 6 weeks also, and found that a very large number of patients, actually up to a third of patients, the stones disappeared or rather passed out without causing problems. So it makes a very strong case for expectant management of CBD stones. Herein lies the problem. Same study, they could not show any correlation of which stones are not going to cause problems. So neither does the size of stone nor the number of stones, diameter of CBD, a raised preoperative alkaline phosphatase, age of patient. None of these factors are predictive of the fact that this stone is not going to cause a problem. And therefore, the wait and watch policy for CBD stones is still in a limbo. The reason is that symptomatic consequences can be very severe. And therefore, there's no way to predict which stones will cause symptoms, and we treat all of the ones which come to our attention. The only ones we wait and watch are very specific circumstances, which are the post-CBD explorations, retained stones with a T-tube in situ, or patients who are very high risk for surgery. What are the options we have? The list is probably much longer than the one I've listed here. The original gold standard is the open cholecystectomy. Much more relevant would be to classify the patients into 4 groups and then see the literature vis-a-vis what exists today. The most common group is obviously the CBD stones where the gallbladder is in situ, and the old gold standard is open surgery and CBD exploration. Probably still relevant to a certain extent. There are 8 randomized controlled trials. They're no longer done. The last one was probably in 1998. The Cochrane review in this year showed us that there is no difference in mortality and morbidity, but the open exploration was far, far more efficient than a ERCP, a preoperative ERCP, in removing these stones. Is it valid today? These studies stopped almost 15 years back, and therefore, to say that ERCP would remove only 80% of the stones today would not be very relevant. Today's discussion mostly focuses on these 2 particular subgroups. Should we do preoperative ERCP versus single-time exploration laparoscopically of both the things? As of today, there are 5 randomized controlled trials. Last week, we had one Turkish trial published, which is not a part of the Cochrane analysis. This was the Cochrane analysis, which was published this year. And it showed us that the two procedures are virtually equivalent with respect to mortality, morbidity, retained stone rate, more importantly. The only thing is that it seems that the single approach, the single time laparoscopic approach, seems to be more efficient in not failing you. Couple of the studies showed that the hospital stay was shorter with the single arm approach, but later studies, 2010 onward, probably the ARCP got more efficient and they showed no difference in the last 3 trials. Cost, there was no difference, and the quality of life, there was no difference in at least one trial. The most efficient of the laparoscopic approaches seems to be the transcystic approach. It is touted to be virtually similar to a laparoscopic cholecystectomy. Patient goes home in 1 or 2 days, and therefore, as a balance of success and patient comfort and efficiency, probably the transcystic approach is the best for the patient. However, it is not possible to do a transcystic approach in all patients. There are a large number of factors which tell you that these patients may not be suitable for a transcystic approach, which includes the size of stones, the location of stones, the number of stones, and others. And therefore, you have to resort to a laparoscopic choledochotomy in these patients. And if you do, then next decision you have to make is whether you need to put a T-tube or not. And today, the literature tells you that T-tubes probably cause more problems than they solve. This is again this year's Cochrane review, which tells us that T-tubes do not have any advantage in terms of mortality, morbidity, or retained stone rate. In fact, they cause increased operation time and cause increased hospital stay. The conclusion of this Cochrane review was that it's time to review a universal application of T-tubes, and we should be actually possibly using them very selectively today. You also need a very long list of equipment for laparoscopic CVD exploration. The reason I put it here is that not only do you need equipment and expertise, you also need willingness to do a laparoscopic CVD exploration. And these are probably the reasons why it's still not very popular, at least in our country. This is why willingness is important. A survey of 58 patients in USA, 68 patients in US, although almost half of them were trained to do a laparoscopic CVD exploration, only 20% actually preferred to do it. And the reasons they gave for not doing a laparoscopic exploration were these. Very ridiculous actually. Almost 60% thought that it's too time consuming for the patient. 1/4 said that no equipment, and see at the bottom of the screen on the right side, lack of skill was quoted as a factor in not doing it only by 1.5%. So if you're not going to be doing a laparoscopic CVD exploration, then the next choice you might have to make is to do a ERCP before or after surgery. Well, there's a single randomized controlled trial of 60 patients, and here is the data for the first group, the preoperative and the time-honored, the most favorite approach today. 100% patients, 30 patients underwent preoperative ERCP, and stones were found only in 40%. The other group underwent intraoperative cholangiograms. If it was positive, then underwent a postoperative ERCP, and only 24% required a postoperative ERCP. The comparison shows us that the two procedures are virtually equivalent, except that the cost in the postoperative ERCP is far lower, because obviously only 1/4 undergoing ERCP, and a non-therapeutic ERCP rate is nil actually. In the first group, 60% patients underwent a non-therapeutic ERCP. A rider here is, this study does not address the concern most of us have. What if the post-op ERCP fails? In this particular study, there are no retained stones, no failed procedures, which can happen. Let's look at another study with the same fear in mind. This was a study from Australia which randomized patients after a failed transcystic exploration at laparoscopy and randomized them to a choledochotomy versus a post-operative ERCP. And here are the results. We seem to think that post-operative ERCP is a big problem. Choledochotomy, 6 patients leaked, 15%, versus nil obviously in the post-operative ERCP arm. Retained stones, same in both the arms. Re-explorations, of course, in the post-op ERCP were for retained stones, and in the choledochotomy were for septic problems, but they were similar. So, if you're going to do a post-operative ERCP, the caveat is you better have a very good endoscopist. The other groups I need to address is what of CVD stones which present to you after a cholecystectomy. There are no randomized controlled trials, unfortunately, and ERCP today is the preferred. The reason for that is this: it achieves the same result as surgery at a very low mortality in this subgroup of patients, and therefore time-honored preoperative the ERCP is a favorite in this particular subgroup. What of patients with retained stones and T-tubes? Well, a wait and watch policy is prudent because at 6 weeks, almost a fourth of these patients, the stones will pass out without any problems. After that, well, there is no comparison of percutaneous T-tube interventions to ERCP, but if you have an intervention radiologist, that would be the way to go. Thereafter, ERCP still achieves a very good result in this group of patients with acceptable morbidity and mortality. In elderly, ideal choice is ERCP followed by a cholecystectomy. However, not all patients are suitable. So therefore, you might land up draining the CVD, removing the stones and leaving the gallbladder alone. But you must understand, you're doing it at a risk. And the risk is this: almost 30% of these patients will come back to you with symptoms and will require some kind of intervention for the gallstones. So I'll conclude by saying that several options are available. This is just a small review of the current status of literature on this particular subject. What you do need to do is understand your local problems with respect to what approach you can follow, the local expertise as well as the equipment, and of course, as I also pointed out, willingness to follow a particular approach. And the choice of intervention should always be discussed with the patient. Thank you.